Welcome to the Matrix Talk Show. Tonight's discussion is going to be about ghosts and their nature. I am David Berck. I have been asked to moderate this panel, and I am relegated back down to the paranormal enthusiast level of things, because I used to be an investigator and I don't do it so much anymore. But we have a great panel here, and we'll go from the far left, the viewer's far left, down toward me, because the center of the universe is this way, right? No?
Right.
Okay. So first we have Ayamanatara. She is a natural clairsentient who has been a trance channel since 1995. As part of her practice, she also does house clearings and cord cuttings, as well as connecting people with their ancestors. Welcome. Sure. Next we have Minister Aura B. Nance-Woodley. She has studied through the master program at Christ Universal Temple in Chicago, Illinois, and has become certified in several energetic healing modalities. Minister Aura teaches meditation, visualization, conflict resolution, leadership, forgiveness, public speaking, and Seikun Reiki. She also holds healing clinics around the country, raising awareness of alternative medicines and their ability to complement standard medicine practices. She is currently the founder of the Wellness Coalition. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
Julie Rieger is our next person. She is the award-winning president, chief data strategist, and head of media at 20th Century Fox. She was responsible for marketing such films as Avatar, Deadpool, The Fault in Our Stars, and The Book Thief. An Oklahoma native, she now lives in Los Angeles with her wife, dogs, and several friendly ghosts. She has completed her first book, The Ghost Photographer. Welcome.
Thank you.
And last, but definitely not least, Patricia Asheme Bankins. She is a born intuitive. She started her metaphysical career clearing houses and doing exorcisms. She is the owner of the Crystal Matrix, a vibrational medicine practitioner, a teacher, a trance channel, and she also does crystal readings.
Hi.
I don't know why I'm saying welcome. This is more your guys' place than mine, but hey, welcome. All right, so let's start off with the basic thing. Let's get some terminology straight, because in my talk that I did last month, we started talking about how different people talk about ghosts and spirits and other beings of that nature. So I'm just going to put this general thing out. What is a ghost?
Oh, we're all going to jump in.
Well, you didn't hear us answer. You need to be more connected. We all answered you already.
In unison, there was harmony.
So as the loser at the table, because you guys are some serious ladies here, I will give my laywoman's version of it, because I use the word ghost, obviously,
Sure.
for the title of my book. I used it to actually capture all the other words, because I can only use one.
Okay.
So I can actually use ghost, spirit, all of that interchangeably, there are certainly differences in them.
Sure.
You can go back to the Catholic Church and talk about the Holy Ghost. So there's lots of, I think, different ways to. I just use it one word, makes life simple.
So it's kind of a collective.
It's a collective.
Okay. I think for most people, when they think of ghosts, they think of, I think my first encounter was Casper, the friendly ghost. You know, it's that white fuzzy thing that floats around and maybe goes boo at Halloween. For metaphysical purposes, a ghost for me would be, again, it is that collective, because it could be a disembodied entity, meaning a human form that the spirit has moved out of the human form and is now in non-human form. So that we consider that, usually we call that a ghost.
Okay.
And I'd probably leave it there, because there's so many other categories, but for ghosts, that's it, yeah.
There are a lot of categories, and that is the challenge to the word.
Yes.
But what comes to my mind is a non-living entity or energy that is, has the ability to, what's the word? The ability to communicate with the physical world.
So your version would then inherently imply intelligence behind it.
Yes, it
And
would.
sentience.
Yes,
Okay.
a level of intelligence.
Okay. Gotcha. Tara?
So a ghost, when I think of ghost, it is very specifically to me, someone who was alive, who is no longer in body, but who is stuck on this plane. That to me is a ghost. Anything else sort of falls under the heading of spirit. Because there are spirits who come back and help us and deal with us and hang out and whatever, but to me ghost is someone who got stuck on their way out. So.
Okay. And so do any of you, I know in my experience I've been trained to differentiate between all these sorts of things. So do any of you differentiate between, say, for lack of a better term, ghost, spirit, or something that is non-human in origin? And specifically speaking about entities like angels, the D word, demons, elementals, those sorts of things.
I do.
Yes.
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 And is there a different way to deal with them?
Yes.
Or you just approach them?
Or what?
Or just to approach them?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So what are some of those differences?
I'll give you an example.
Okay. I like examples.
Okay. To have what might look like a ghost could actually be an energy loop. And so making contact through observation and then engagement will give me the clue what I have there. A loop, for anyone who might be interested in knowing this, can be a person or an action that keeps happening again and again in the same place. Like someone walking up a flight of stairs and then disappearing at the top of the stairs is a good example of a loop. Flip that over, and a demon would not get a lot of conversation out of me once I had determined that that was, indeed what I was dealing with. And I would be much more involved in the work of getting that thing loose enough to pop up and go to the light.
And
Just as an example.
just to play off of something that Natara said as far as the ghost being kind of trapped here or stopped here, I think that's one of the things that we see so much with, if you want to call it ghosts or spirits, disembodied entity, is that there is something within the physical or 3D world that has captured them or keeps them captured within this reality or this vibration, if you will. And it's the capturing within that vibration. Could be, usually it's a very strong emotion, so love, hatred, anger, confusion is a really powerful piece that can hook somebody, and we see a lot of ghosts that stay around like battlefields because they don't realize that they are dead. Love will keep a spirit here or a ghost here because a mother may have passed over and wants to remain here to watch over a child. Again, a child may die, and the same thing, wants to stay close to the mother. So it's the human connection that somehow threads or cords this spirit that has moved out of physical form.
I've also found, if I can play off of that, then, that sometimes it's the still living that actually create that cord, not the other way around.
Yes.
If I have a very strong attachment to someone who has passed, I may be somewhat holding them here if I don't consciously do releasing work, just as an example.
Yes.
Which sort of slides right into the issue of addiction. Because some can be stuck here because of an addiction, hanging out at the bars and waiting for a portal to slide into, that sort of thing. So addictions can often be a part of why an apparition won't leave.
And as the ghost photographer, do you find that it is easier or that you capture more of one type or another on film? Or actually, we don't even really use film much anymore.
No, it was my iPhone,
Right?
my high-tech equipment. What I think that I saw a lot of, I actually got a lot of animals. I did have a number that looked like they were human. All of them but one, I did not recognize. The one that I did was my mother. And now I'm thinking, oh man, did I not let her go? What have I done? Sorry. Thanks. I'm going to therapy after this. And then I also get what we've talked about before, which are the thought creatures. You know, I talk about them in the sense of entities or creatures look like they prance out of a movie that I've worked on. Things that Walt Disney could have come up with. So they can look friendly and interesting, and look like things that are so familiar. Like I've seen some that look like the guy on the cover of Mad Magazine.
Alfred E. Newman.
Thank you. I've seen him. I've seen a few that look like the Muppets. They were there to entertain me, I think. No, but I think they had probably so I would recognize, and not to make me fearful. It's like, oh, what's familiar to this person, I can shift into. And then even some look like, one of my favorite ones, look like they were like a centaur that looked like a wizard with a prince and princess riding on top of him. In the swimming pool.
In a swimming pool.
Our swimming pool. We don't live there anymore. But in our swimming pool.
Constant splashing.
Yeah. Looks, I mean, things that look like they could be in an animated movie is how I talked about them. So I've gotten a lot, and I've gotten a few aliens. One on his t-shirt that had the letter C and the number 3 and the number 2, which is, if you Google it, which I do, is the whale galaxy. Right? He had a t-shirt on. I'm like, well, if I was
Just so you know.
I thought, well, if I was going to go someplace, I would wear something, you know, Dodgers or something. I would do something, but it was the only one I ever had that had a marking like that.
Interesting. And the thought forms for some of the people who may have had this thought already are also referred to as tulpas, which has a very big cultural connotation to it in a lot of instances. And trust me, we're going to get to that in a little bit. But in the meantime, Ora, you were talking about the loop. Something that people who watch the ghost shows, which we're just going to kind of, yeah, I saw the laugh. I know. But,
Stupid Hollywood.
But they, you know, they've kind of recoined the term into residual hauntings and intelligent hauntings. So you're talking about what some people may know as a residual haunting. If you're old school in parapsychology, then it's called a haunting. That's just what they call it. And I'm not really in favor of that nomenclature because it has another connotation. And that's why I wanted to start with terminology, because some of these things have a different sort of just a connotation to them, a cultural connotation that we bring our baggage into. So that's why I want to start off with terminology, so that we can also kind of also be on the same page when we're talking about these things. And so as the audience has seen, we can see that ghosts is a huge umbrella term, and that's probably just the best way just to accept that that's the way it's going to be used for the rest of the evening. So. And we've already kind of touched on this, but I did have just a big question. The second thing after defining was, why do ghosts stick around? What are the things you were talking about? Things or people can keep them here. There was a show dedicated to the things that they're attached to that would keep them here. And so, in all of your experiences, what sort of specific things do you find keep them here? And we can talk about emotion, we can talk about attachment, emotional attachments. What is the panel's experience with that?
The one I come into contact with the most is sudden or undesirable death. I mean, like, you know, murder, suicide, stuff like that.
It's
Car
the
accident.
surprise of it.
Yeah, it's the surprise of it. Yeah, car accidents out of nowhere, that kind of stuff. Or in the moment of death, something was so unresolved that they felt like they had to stay and try to fix it. And generally doesn't work. You just have to kind of put them on so they can process it later. But those are the things that I get when we start with.
I've had, as you say, that the human-like photographs that I've taken, I have several that are in the book. One of them, I call her Sad Lady. She looks sad. Right. And then I have a guy that I call him Mr. Black Eye. I don't know why I called him Mr. Very respectful to the ghost. But he looked like he'd been beaten up. Black eye, hence the name. Very literal with my ghost naming. So I feel the same, that those forms have definitely, you know, encountered something that was shocking, frightening, fear, whatever it may be. I mean, it's not like they were in a hospital room and surrounded by their loved ones, and they, you know, I think it's very different, which I think also explains why when you mentioned war, right, where so many places around this country where there were Civil War battles, where there's still a lot of activity. So that makes a lot of sense why they are still here. But I also think that they can come back and kind of, you know, I don't think that every ghost spirit that we see has a sob story.
Right.
I think that there is the ability to project down, be in multiple places. You know, I've met some incredibly powerful spirits as well. Some I know. When they went over, they were already ascended here. They ascended even more, and they're like, okay, you can see me, but now I'm out.
Sure, I mean, I come across a lot of energies, beings, spirits that aren't necessarily what I would call ghosts.
Right.
You know, because
Yeah.
that's why I make the
Yes.
distinction
Yes.
between a ghost is stuck. They never left. They're still
Right,
here.
so, and I think that's ghost to me is the truly earthbound for some emotional or dramatic reason has been caught here in 3D, where spirit is a disembodied entity that has resolved, moved on, and is coming back to visit, because it wants to help. But that's why I've always kind of separated those two terms.
I mean, that's like, I do a lot of ancestor work, and the ancestors, they've generally left and they're not stuck here.
Right.
If they're stuck, I try to send them on, and if they then want to come back and hang out and help out, great. But the stuckness is problematic to me. I mean, not from a judgy point of view, it's just like, you're gonna do much better if I can send you on first,
Right.
and then you can come back if you need to.
So we're agreeing to that I need to stop telling people that when I'm dead, that my ghost is gonna haunt the hell out of them. So we're saying my spirit
Yeah.
is what I'm gonna say. It's like, so
Sure.
when I'm a ghost, I said, no, I'm gonna change it now.
Because
When
that
I'm
would
a
be like
spirit,
an advanced or a more intelligent
I think I'm gonna
ghost.
advance
All right, good.
my
Yeah.
threats,
Yeah.
is what I
Sure.
think that we just decided.
Unlike
That sounds
goals, right?
Right, dead goals,
Right.
Sure.
afterlife goals.
So, in speaking with certain people who talk about spirits or ghosts being stuck, and for various reasons, and I've known people that say, well, all they have to do is turn around and see the light, and they can move on. And there's a lot of skeptical eye going on right here, right now. So I was just gonna ask, is it that easy?
Well, if it was, more would do it.
Right.
Right.
Just like dieting. If it were that easy, more would do it.
Not in my experience.
Okay.
It's not that easy in my experience. Yeah, because otherwise, why would they need me to help?
Right.
And again, we get back to that place of what is it that is drawing their attention. If their attention is drawn into I'm crossing over and I'm dying, so somehow our society is kind of stuck using the word death and dying. I think that's funny, but I know, it's an old George Carlin thing. But anyway, I think if more of them were already resigned and comfortable with the fact of death, that they were then moving into the next dimension or wherever they're going to go, then it's easy to follow if you're going to go towards the light or you're going to go to the next aspect, because when you really look at energy, this whole piece that we're actually sitting in looks like a large wormhole with light at one end and light at the other end. And as we traverse the wormhole, what we're doing is we're going towards the light on this end. We pop through that light and we go into a whole other wormhole. I mean, that's really what's happening. You can talk about quantum physics on that, or look up Nassim Haramein. He'll be glad to describe that in much better terms. But that's in essence what happens. But when you have someone that isn't focused on, I am dying and I'm going into the next phase of wherever I'm going, you have that attachment, and it's again we have the attachment that holds somebody here, and they're focused on the attachment rather than focusing on I'm moving through.
So I've also seen some confusion. So when I've gone into people's homes to help clear things, there's always activity around the electrical box, the breaker.
Mm.
And so I found that if you think about what our world is now compared to what it used to be, everything is either plugged in. Well, I say plugged in now, I sound like grandma with her toaster. But it's like, you know, from computers to our satellites and all the televisions and everything that we have, there's a lot of flashing of light. And I think there is,
And it's really bright, yeah.
and I think there's some confusion.
Well, we had at the previous location for the Crystal Matrix, it was haunted. The whole 5 years we were there, it was haunted. It's probably still haunted. But we encountered some young, they had been young men that died at an early age. And they were actually, this was a very, do you remember this one? They were holding a bunch of young souls, meaning probably 15 and they died at 15 years or younger. They were holding them over at Dodger Stadium because everybody liked baseball. And can't believe I'm going for this one. And they were holding them
down for a minute so nobody can remember my name. Just kidding.
And they were holding them there because of the electromagnetic confusion. What had happened was that these young people had passed over, that died, and because of how much electromagnetic energy, because we each have, I've got a watch on, I've got a phone in my pocket, there's an iPad over there, there's so much electronics right now, and that electronics is creating that electromagnetics, and it's that electromagnetics now that is diverting what we used to say, oh my God, there's the light. What we're seeing is it's all electromagnetic fracturing and structuring, and you can't tell when you die if you don't realize I'm dying. It's hard to differentiate. Is it her iPhone or is it the light? I don't know. I'll go for the iPhone because it's familiar. So. Did you remember that? And then we cleared it for like hours and hours.
Something just clicked for me because that may be why I get a lot of ghost requests, because I have such a weird electromagnetic field that I tend to short out electronics. Mm. So that makes a certain amount of sense. It hadn't occurred to me, but yes. Thank you.
So that also brings to mind past discussions I've had about why sport venues can be very active. Mm. Especially especially with residual energies. People hearing things like a crowd cheering when the stadium isn't even there any longer. We also get reports of amusement parks being active, and it sounds like it could be a combination of that, plus people want to go back and visit the places where they were happiest. And so again, we have this whole kind of multifaceted, there's no one specific reason for these things to be happening. So it makes a discussion difficult.
Could it also be, though, I mean, if we want to talk about a sports venue, could it also be because you have thousands of people all focused electromagnetically with the mind, all focused on one particular idea or concept, creating thought form around it, and it's the thought form then that is in the loop and constantly replaying the loop of that good game.
Yeah.
What happens when the season's over?
It's still a good game.
You're still focused on the
You're
next
still doing
season,
it,
yeah. If you're in the loop,
You get that many people in one place focused on one thing, and that energy exists whether the people there or not. I mean, that's what happens in good sacred space and stuff too.
Yes. Yeah.
So to your points, one of the photographs that I took, and I didn't even see what was in it until months later, was at the Hollywood Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
It was Neil Diamond. And in the photograph, it's a 4-color photo, because it was my iPhone, let's remember. And off to the right, where I finally saw the stagehand, a spirit stagehand or a ghost stagehand, that part of the photograph was black and white.
Neat.
Isn't that interesting?
Mhm.
But if you're talking about thought form and what goes on at the bowl, right? The bowl is very magical for a lot of people. It's one of my favorite places in Los Angeles. And so of course there's going to be a draw, right? Why are you smiling? Is it the Neil Diamond part? Is it I'm too young to love Neil Diamond? Is that what you're saying? Because that's how I'm translating that look.
No, I was just asking about the story. It's that thought form thing. It's-
Sweet
it's the-
Caroline.
It's the thought form.
Bum.
Don't start it.
It's reflexive.
And everyone energetically was in their own space up until the stagehand could be in black and white, because he may have actually been in a 40s perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You look at him and he looks,
It's like 40s,
and yeah.
1940s.
Yes.
1940s.
Yeah.
I was in my 40s at the time, I knew what he meant. This is a
Trying to
comedy show too,
translate.
yes we can. Ghost comedy.
Yeah.
So actually playing off of that, I had a question regarding, are there certain patterns or certain conditions that bring out the presence of an entity?
Ooh, patterns.
Or circumstances?
Oh, circumstances,
Because in the paranormal investigation field, we talk about running water and places with high EMF and things like that, and those seem to contribute to activity. You guys, using the panel, sees things in a different frame, so to speak.
Yeah.
Photography.
So, back at you. New career.
I'm a terrible comedian. So, I'm just wondering, do any of you see certain patterns? Do certain things have to happen in a certain order? What brings about some of this activity? Are there commonalities?
Because we've been talking about what motivates them, and what we seem to all be coming to is that it's really about charged energy.
Mhm.
It can be anything that charges the energy to pop up, but it's usually an emotional attachment of some sort. So,
So Bela Lugosi still haunting the studios
yes, because he
down in
was
Culver
in
City.
heaven for him.
Yeah.
When he was there and able to be an actor and open and free. You go to the place. If you can't go to the place where heaven is, then you create it through the power that you have outside of the body. There's an aspect of our ability to materialize things in the ethereal that increases and goes and makes it becomes more powerful, strong, and everything. So a person can make a life on the fourth dimension and never actually recognize that they have completely passed over. An example, well, number one,
You see
I just
old
have to
ones, that's why you
say,
see a lot of old ones.
Yes.
That's why you see Civil War,
yes,
you see all of that.
those are the charged moments.
Yeah.
Those are the moments where they felt the most alive.
They felt the most alive, exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
is really what's happening. So that's why the movie The Others is one of my favorite movies ever, because it shows the chargedness of this moment where she actually does, I'm gonna spoiler alert, kills her kids, but before that, she's in this heightened place of wanting to protect them. And that's what you see most through the entire movie, her trying to protect her kids. As a personal example, I was minding my own business, walking through a museum, and I went past this encased room. It was supposed to celebrate the frontier life. And it was a cabin-like looking structure with a baby's crib in there and a little a bed and a few other things. Very, very much looked like Little House on the Prairie, okay, kind of a situation. My eye went first to the crib and then to this little place that had to have been the woman's little bitty vanity with a brush and a few things over there. And I immediately started crying, couldn't stop, I was heaving. And I had 3 other friends that were with me, and they guided me to a chair, and they knew me, and we were all doing demon chasing and different things like that during that time period, so they knew that something was going on. So I sat down and allowed myself to go into that room and into that casing. And when I sat next to her, and it's probably going to happen again right now, when I stood next to her, this woman appeared by the crib. And I said, "Why are you here?" And she said, "Because my baby just passed away, and I don't know how to tell my husband. I don't know how to leave this room." Mm-hmm. And when I looked down in the crib, the kid was just moving around and happy, in the light, but absolutely fine. And I had to figure out what to do to get her to move onto the light. And what came to me, because it was clear she had life stopped for her. Mm-hmm. And when I asked her what was going on, she died too. But she was so not wanting to leave her husband, not wanting to leave the space. This was too important that she didn't recognize it. Of course, the baby was like ready to go as soon as she was. He was kind of playing around and hanging out and just waiting on her. I said, "Why don't you take another look at the baby? Because I think he's ready." And that's when the shift started to happen, and she allowed us, because all of these other people had to help me, get her to the light. But what was holding her was fear and love. Mm. Both things were holding her.
Both such strong.
Very strong. Right. She was stuck. And all of us helped her to move from that space on. This was someone who was lost in the real sense. Yeah. And the way that I felt about the room, it felt like the 1700s that had gone on. But can you imagine being so attached to your things? Because these were all her things. Right. They took literally a cabin and moved a chunk of it to make this museum happen. And there she was, stuck with all of her things.
I think that happened at the Banning residence. Have you been there? The first wife, the one who died in childbirth, I don't remember her name. I went to the residence and I didn't see her, but damn, she had some horrible perfume that I smelled for a long time and followed me around. And then eventually we get to the stable in the back, and I finally sat down and eventually I'm like, "Okay, who are you and why are you following me around?" And she told me her name, it's in the book, I forget. She loved. She didn't want to go when she died. She loved that home, and they also took all the old furniture, put it in there, like they staged it to the best of their ability of what it was like in the 1800s. So it looked probably incredibly familiar to her.
Sure.
I'm learning up on this panel. I'm not helping, I'm just learning.
I'm learning.
And that particular residence was the biggest home for miles around because they, I forget the owner's name, Mr. Banning, was an industrial tycoon, basically.
He was a shipping
for
guy.
The area, yes.
Yeah, he was a shipping guy, and it was Phineas Banning.
Right.
And he also funded a Civil War training camp not far away. The drum barracks not far away. And there's a room in the drum barracks where there's all these weaponry from the time. And I walked in there and almost fell over. I was like, "Whoa, put your stuff down." I mean, there's still so much activity because there are these weapons. Either they were killed by the weapons, or they killed with the weapons, all in that area.
Right.
Nobody was hanging out by the piano, for the record. They're all hanging out by the weapons.
By the weapons.
Yeah, by the weapons.
Yeah, and not many people realize that the Union sent troops over to California at the time to be trained, and the drum barracks over in Wilmington was a major training site
Yes,
for the
it was.
Union.
And Banning paid for that, he funded that, and that's where they actually, just for fun, they tried to train camels instead of horses. It didn't work. They're a little stubborn.
Yes.
It'd be like training one of us.
They don't mind so well.
So we've kind of alluded to this thing, and thank you, because this leads right into something that I really wanted to go into, is the differences in cultural influences when it comes to encountering ghosts. And we talked about our society, who is very avoidant of the subject of death and crossing over and those things, even though it's such a huge discussion topic, but as a society, we kind of agreed to kind of just shuffle it off to the side and not really consider it. So we have this cultural approach to death, but I'm also wondering, does the culture that the spirit or ghost come from also make a difference in the way they manifest or the things they do?
Yes. Sorry. I say that specifically because of an experience I had in France, in Paris. I went down into the catacombs. If you're sensitive, don't do that. Just for the record, don't do that. I stopped being able to walk. My boyfriend literally had to drag me out. And I don't think that everybody in the catacombs, is stuck there, but there are enough people who are stuck there and who are very angry about the treatment of how their bones were treated. And I think that has a lot to do with how the French view the dead. I think that's a very cultural thing. You don't find that as much in this country.
I found that in Italy, because
Similar
there's
thing.
a catacomb-ish, and it was the Christians that were executed. And I remember walking in there and I'm just crying. I couldn't stop. Not like you were, girl. But it was because of it felt very familial. It was all about lost family. It was very emotional to be in that.
Yeah, the catacombs in Paris felt very stuck to me. I mean, like, I was having problems breathing, I was having problems walking, it was just very stuck.
Oh, I didn't
go in.
in.
I had a
Just like
similar
under-
situation in an odd place. I was in Georgia, and there's a store. I don't even know if it exists anymore, but it had it was dedicated to expressing and explaining about slavery in the area and its part in it. And I found myself standing in front of what do they call it? A mastiff, the list of slaves. Was a manifest, thank you, for one of the plantations. And I was looking down it, and I recognized that my breathing was getting really weird in there in general, and that I was starting to feel this weird heat. It was like a moist heat. And I didn't understand it until I got further down and really took a look at the whole wall. There was a map of how the slaves were laid out in the boat, but the thing at the bottom was a man's name at the bottom named Otis. I'll never forget this. He was 74, I believe, on it. And his value was a negative $20. I stopped breathing for a second. And all of a sudden, I felt like I was on the plantation, and that heat moist was that I was feeling. And I felt like Otis was there. And that the decision of Otis's cost was not about Otis, more about, because everyone else valued him greater. It was just suddenly Otis was in my eyeballs, and I could see what Otis was seeing. And I don't know if that was Otis right there with me in that moment, or just an essence of him that may have been captured in this paper somehow. But yeah, that was definitely cultural for me. Whenever I go down to the South, I have to be extremely prepared and careful because they all want to talk.
I think there's changes, there's differences across the globe, for
Yeah.
sure.
Right.
Yeah.
With different cultures that believe and embrace and don't fear death. That there is not as much, you know, I mean, of course, there's gonna be traumatic deaths and things like that. But I've kind of looked across and I look and see what different words that are used to Google around that search around the world, and countries of heavy belief systems, they Google those words less. They Google the word ghost less, spirit less, reincarnation less, all of those things because it's in the culture.
Freely talked about.
Freely
Exactly.
talked about.
Yeah, when I was in Japan, I think I encountered fewer ghosts there than anywhere else I've been. And the ones that were very chill. It's not like they were stuck. They'd chosen to hang out.
Came to visit, yeah.
But,
They were tourists like you.
yeah, it was interesting. And it didn't seem like maybe they'd fully gone into the light or whatever, but there was no, this is not okay.
There's nothing.
Where
heavy
when
about
you get into Native American culture, once someone dies, in a number of the cultures, I know Hopi and Zuni, they're not gonna speak a Navajo. You do not speak the name of the person that has crossed over and the home is sealed up so that nothing can get out, nothing can go back in. The hogan is closed so that the ghost does not come and attach to human form and possess, but is forced to move into another dimension to go with spirit. So
And I
that's
know
a
that
whole
some
cultural
of the nations even have kind of a, yeah, no, they may not possess, but they may mess with us, kind of a thing too, so. Some of the Native American nations.
One of the things, and I handed this to, did you want to?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, one of the things that I'm kind of listening to also, and Aura tapped into it. And I'm not sure, I mean, this is more like residual energy. I don't know that I would call it ghosts, but I think that each of us as vital living form, have within a cellular memory of life's past, because there is a continuation that happens here. I can go down into Georgia and I've looked at those and I will have the same response. Okay, so I know that we have, how many different lifetimes have each of us lived, and I wonder if it's not, is it the ghost that is standing there that is vibrating or trying to catch my attention, or is it a cellular resonance within me that is remembering on some degree a lifetime in that other space and time?
Which would also attach to the concept of reincarnation.
It absolutely would.
Oh, absolutely. I felt that the first time I went to India. I was like, oh my God, I'm home. I haven't been here in a long time. This feels great.
Right.
I loved it.
Yeah. I hear what she's saying too. I agree,
Yeah.
that sometimes you're seeing and working with something that's actually partially about you too.
Yes.
And I did feel that way with the woman in the cabin. I felt like the baby, because I do believe that our souls, we got a lot of work to do. The souls divide, we gotta take care of a bunch of things.
Right.
So you can be in multiple places, and I do believe that's a really good point. I do believe that sometimes we as workers in this are drawn to past life, maybe soul contracts and things like that need to be cleared up.
And.
I agree.
Yes, sorry.
This is-
I think also there's, cultural wounds can be palpable.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain museum displays that may not have been collected from a space of integrity that I have a very strong emotional response to. And it's not that anyone is there, but the cultural wound is there. And it's so painful to be in the presence of.
Yes.
But it's not a ghost, it's not even a spirit coming back, it's the cultural wound.
And for people, for viewers who want to understand why there are certain visitations that they may get themselves that has nothing to do with this, I think timing is something that is important to know. Like, these are not, I'm not talking about the hauntings, because I just wanted to share that when I captured the photograph of my mother after she had passed, it was the night before my 45th birthday. That was not by accident. She was like, "Hey, baby," you know, like there's timing for things, for spirits to come back. Because I think we've been talking a lot about the ones that are stuck and hovering and cultural things, but I think that what so many people are interested in is more connecting with those that they've loved and still love. And those are things that I think that timing, I think that those spirits, we're not going to use the word ghost, those spirits, you know, are, and as much as they can, trying to help, right? Trying to bring some peace and calmness to people, even though sometimes they get the shit scared out of them. We can say shit on YouTube.
You can say whatever you want.
Right, no doubt. I mean, you said George Carlin, there were 7 words you couldn't say on television. Yeah. But I thought maybe we could just cruise through them real fast. But and they do it in such different ways. I mean, my mother came in the way that she did. But then there is the, you know, there was a night that I was writing the book, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. And I heard some things being knocked down in my writing shed, and I first went, "Mom, is that you?" "Yeah, I got a yes." I'm like, "Okay, don't break anything." And because it was a tough piece that I was writing, and so it's like they kind of come at their, I wasn't asking for, not consciously, I don't even think subconsciously. So I think for the people who are, because I've been getting a lot of those questions through the book tour, like what people are so interested in is they want that connection. They want that when they can, right? When they need it.
And so we talk a lot when we're talking about ghosts and hauntings about the negative kind of things that can happen, because that's what Hollywood loves to play up, because that's where a story lies, right? So what would you all recommend as far as being cautious? What are there things to be cautious of when you're trying to interact? Should you get what you really wish for?
And are you interacting with the spirit, the one that they know, or you're just talking about just playing in the world? Yeah. Don't use a Ouija board. Ever. That's a big no-no.
That's terrible. Intention, I think intention is so important. That's, yeah.
And I've met hundreds of people in the last month with this, and they all ask me about, well, how do I either start a practice, or how can I get in contact? What do I need to do? And I'm like, you need to find somebody who knows what they're doing. That's number one. You need to find the ones that are truly gifted, that can do it and safely, is the number one thing I say to people. Then I give them Patricia's number.
Well, some people, like, they want to talk to the relatives, and then they have so little connection to them that they don't realize when they're there. I was doing a reading for someone, and she wanted to talk to guidance and ancestors. I'm like, okay, so my experience is that everybody has an entourage of about 14 at any given time hanging out with them for guidance and stuff. And so a male relative stepped forward, and I started explaining to her who he is, and I didn't have a name, and I didn't know exactly what relation they were. But I'm like, so he was in something medical related or health related, and he seems like a close relative, so like, I don't know, a grandfather, an uncle, or something like that. And I talked about a few more things. She's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I was like, okay. And I went on, doing other stuff. Half an hour into this, she stops. She goes, oh, that was my dad. I was the only person in the room with him when he died.
But see, you bring up an interesting point, because I think that's, I think
you get nervous.
It's the expectation that someone has. It's like they go into it, and you wanted to talk to your friend Mona when you spoke with the psychic Brenda, but who you got was your mom and dad.
Right.
And if you'd been closed off and she'd said, well, these are the words that they're saying, you would go, well, Mona never said that. And I think that's, I've seen that too when I do readings. It's something that happens where someone will You know, they have the expectation, this is the person that they want to talk to, and that's not the person that's showing up for them.
Well, and I think, in all fairness, I'm the mortal here amongst you lovely ladies, that I've been in that place. That I think that there is anxiety and nervousness and fear that people have, that you can explain something. Because I also witnessed something like that. We were, my wife and I were at a dinner with Teresa Caputo, I'm name dropping. And do what?
Love her.
She's great. And so we're at a dinner with Teresa Caputo, and she was speaking to a friend of mine at the table, and it was very clear to me actually who she was talking about. She's like, there's a head wound, a gun wound, and she's just go on and on and on and on and on, and finally my friend's husband said, honey, that's your dad. But I think she was so anxious and nervous and scared and all those things that she just couldn't connect. It was too scary, it just hard. Us mortals do that.
Fascinating. Right. If you don't mind, I want to flip this a little bit. The same question, but from a different angle. If someone I knew wanted to have a contact and didn't necessarily want me there or anybody else there, the first thing that I would say to them is know your power. You are more powerful than anything you're going to ask to come forward. It may not seem that way sometimes with it, but know that that is true and that is real. Also, you have a right to demand to know who you are speaking to. If they are not telling you, if they're joking, if you say, are you from the light, and they go, you're out.
Yeah.
Okay? Bye-bye. And so activating your power while you're doing this journey is essential. There are a whole bunch of other physical tools that you can take along with you, but I suggest prayer. I suggest over anything else,
I'm with you.
pray. Pray for protection. If you like Archangel Michael, he's already ready for that circumstance. And there are several pantheon energies and so forth that can help you with the protection aspect of it. And the final thing I would say is that after your experience, no matter how fabulous it may have been, clean yourself. Am I wrong?
Amen.
Okay.
Amen on that.
Clean yourself,
Take a
clear
spiritual
yourself.
shower, baby.
Yeah, take a spiritual shower. Use salt, good salt. Sea salt is good. Pink salt is even better because that'll help if your heart got involved in that thing at all. If you know how to clear chakras, do that. If not, then go to a professional and get it done. It's money well spent. It'll keep you from having really bad dreams afterwards, or anxiety, or feeling as if someone is following you, because they probably are if you didn't close it properly. That's what I would. Technical, schmechnical.
That's intent. That's intent.
That's
Yeah.
intent.
That's some of what I teach in my protection class.
Yes.
Is making sure that, you know, there's a beginning and an end to it.
Yes.
And stating your space clearly, so that, yeah.
Yes.
I think a lot of people just don't know
Yes.
that they have the power.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know.
Yes.
Because that's why so many people are afraid of ghosts or spirits,
Yes.
or whatever you want to call them.
Well, that's because we don't talk about
Because
it.
we
It's
don't.
supposedly not real, so.
Right.
Too many Hollywood movies that show you.
Those are not my fault. Wait a minute.
I'll
I'll take the blame for Poltergeist, but that's the only one I'm
Poltergeist is pretty good.
gonna, that's all I'm taking blame for.
So, I mean, just kind of piggyback on what you were talking about, we have, and people's expectations about what's gonna happen. Now, how do you handle someone who's a hardcore skeptic, who is not willing to accept that possibility?
I love that.
But they get dragged into it by someone that they're in a relationship with, or, you know, things are happening and all of a sudden they can't deny that something is happening, even no matter how hard they try to explain it away.
I find laughing at them was really.
Sorry.
I
Like
don't know
that.
if it's helpful or not, but that is my tactic, yes.
Sorry. It's, you know, it's, I appreciate skepticism because I think we need that as opposed to just blindly going into whatever this is. But there's nothing quite as gratifying for one of us, or at least for me, you know, when someone is that kind of skeptic and you watch them get the attachment, or you watch them, you know, start to have all the effects of what's happening, and it's like, all you can do is sit back and just enjoy it. Because, you know, because eventually they're gonna get spirit slapped and they'll snap out of it, hopefully. Or they will just completely close down. Anybody want to go after that? I'm sorry, but that's...
I'm with you on that. I actually have had experience with the other side of that, which is, you know, I get called to come in and clear a house.
Mhm.
And I leave, and several months later, they call me and they're like, it's back. And I'm like, were you looking for it? Because you called it back in.
There you go.
Exactly.
I understand that it made you feel special to have a haunting, and you need to resolve whatever those feelings were.
On the book tour, have been on a few call-in shows, radio shows, and I had a guy that called into one of the shows, and he could not wait to tell me how he could not see in the ghosts in photographs. He pretty much thinks it's mumbo jumbo, and he wanted to argue with me because, for starters, that's what our culture is right now, right? All we want to do is just fight and pit one against the other. And my response to him left him speechless. When he said, well, I just don't believe it, I'm like, you don't have to.
Mhm.
Because you just don't. It is not required. I am not selling anything, because I'm not. It's like you can read or not read it. You know, you can believe or not believe. It's up to you, and that is actually a respectful, coming from a respectful place.
Sure.
Where it's like, you don't have to, because when, for so many that don't, what I find is they can't, because it will throw their whole belief system into chaos. And if one thing is untrue, what they believe, what else is untrue?
Then everything is untrue.
Then everything is. And so there's just, so chaos, avoiding chaos, I think is, so I've put photographs in front of people. And mind you, we use photographs in a court of law. Right, that's considered proof. I put photographs that, it's pretty hard to deny that Mr. Black Eye does not exist. And I've had people say, oh, well, I see that, but I still don't believe. I'm like, well, don't get on a jury. Because they just can't.
Mm-hmm.
They just flat out cannot. It's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I know someone who actually we did a little goading because he's a hardcore skeptic, but he actually invited a demon into his home. And
Well, he's an idiot skeptic.
every once in a while, he will pipe up with "still not here," and we just keep going. They're not on your timetable, first of all, and second of all, how do you know?
You're not willing to see it, or you can.
Right. So again, intention, right?
Intention.
And the invitation to go ahead, mess with me. That's a terrible
Why would anyone
idea.
ask for that?
Yeah.
You know,
Because that's their level of disbelief.
I will tell you, actually.
It's a challenge.
Because I've experienced this. I have a story of a friend of mine named Alex that had sleep paralysis, and he kept being messed around with from the Hat Man.
Yes.
And there was a time when he's like, well, what if I want him to come back? I'm like, well, you're an idiot. Because, well, what if when I ask him a question? What if I da-da-da? But, you know, now that I know who he is, like, it was this kind of tough guy thing that was happening. You talk to Alex now, he's like, I tell you what, I am so glad I've not seen that thing again. This has been the best few years of my life. I don't know what I was thinking, but it's like a bit of a bit, and think you're also add mind reading to your list.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was thinking. And I think it also, he was a real skeptic. Even going through that, still a real skeptic. And I think I think curiosity is, that term, curiosity killed the cat, is very true with humans, and, you know, inviting those things in. It's like, as he said, well, what if he comes to see you? You will read, I wrote, he's not invited. to see me.
Yeah.
I won't see him.
Right.
He's not invited. He's not invited not out of fear, but he's not invited because I think he's all those 7 words that George Carlin said you can't say on television.
Amen.
We'll say them later.
Amen. We will say them later. We'll spell them out.
So,
I don't love skeptics a lot. I don't have a lot of patience for it. I used to go backward trying to convince, and I found myself exhausted beyond belief after every session. And for me, it may not seem very pleasant, but I go, okay.
And move
Well,
on.
Yep.
yeah, we were speaking earlier before we started taping, and there's a saying that I love. Having been convinced myself, I seek not to convince.
Amen.
So-
Ashe, I hope.
Yeah, so it's a great saying, and I wish I could remember who said it. Someone.
Let's say it was you.
Yeah.
Just
That
said
wasn't
it
me.
right now.
I just said it right now, but
Right,
those
you
were
did
my
just
words.
say it.
But I think it's a fantastic thing because at some point you do have to, forgive the term, but cut the cord and go ahead and go on your merry way. And I hope you can expect or accept the responsibility that you've engendered by doing these things. So, Natara, you talked a little bit about clearing a house. So, again, let's go back to a little bit of terminology. First, how does clearing a house work? And is there a difference between blessing a house and exercising a house?
Fascinating. I like that question. So clearing a house is more than just de-haunting or removing the ghosts, first of all, because anywhere you go, you leave a residual energy, and if enough people are leaving a residual energy that you're not appreciating in your house, that can get cleared too. And I think the majority of what I do when I clear a house is honestly just literally like energetic housekeeping. You know, I'm getting all of the old energy out. Having said that, I have worked in houses that have ghosts, and various energies and portals and entities and whatever. I start by trying to convince them that they'd like to go. I start from the nice end of things and I work my way up.
They'll argue with you though.
So yeah, if they start arguing, I'm like, okay, so we're gonna actually pull out a tool now, we're gonna play with this a little bit, you know. And if they get real stubborn, I'm bringing salt, you know.
Yeah.
And I usually end with a house blessing, just to address the blessing part. Because my idea is if I'm clearing something, I want to leave it happy and fresh, you know? And that's the best way for me to do that. I may ward it first and then bless it. But as far as how that works, I have a lot of different methods I use for clearing energy that aren't necessarily what I would use for clearing a ghost. And ghosts are different to send on than like an entity or an energy or something like that. But I tend to bring like all of the equipment and see what needs happening. And I do like to start from the soft end of things and see how easy this is and see how much effort I have to put into it before I move into something there. But I know there was that house that Patricia and I worked on over in, I think it was like Echo Park or someplace, where they had changed, like they had boarded up windows and built walls over them, and every doorway from one room to another had like some weird energy going on in it. And part of that was simply the people who were living in that home. And part of it was like that had been some kind of like plantation worker's house or something, and there was like a gun in a wall and like all kinds of weird stuff. And I mean, that had to be cleared on every level possible, including like trying to explain to the people who lived there how to keep their relationship energy clean so that it didn't go back to being gunky. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what I got.
What about the exorcism?
Uh,
I know it's more of a church-related term.
Yeah, exorcism is definitely a church-related term. Having said that, one of the tools that I use is part of the Catholic exorcism prayer. Specifically because if you have enough, just like, if you have enough people going into a space and doing a thing, if you have enough people saying the same thing for the same purpose, using the same words, it's going to have some oomph to it.
It has power, yeah.
And the Catholic exorcism prayer done in Latin has a lot of oomph. And so I will use that. Specifically the part where it says negative energies be gone, And I also consider an exorcism to be a banishing. And it doesn't have as much intention about where you're sending the thing. It's an FU kind of a thing to me. And I much prefer to like kind of go into the light kind of a thing than to just be like, and you're not welcome here. Right. Much like don't set yourself up for being attacked, just simply shunts that off onto the next person. I like to actually take care of the situation as opposed to just passing the buck.
One of the things that, as far as exorcisms, because that's where I started, was doing exorcisms. And I remember thinking, wow, that's fun.
Who starts there?
Right? I don't know.
It's like, by live stream, I'm gonna start with exorcism.
I was at a metaphysical school and they were like, you can start an exorcism. And I was okay. But the thing that, because while you were talking, the thing I was thinking about was residual energies. And when we go in, and then Aura had talked also about like prayers and protections. And when we're going in to clear a space, there are two easy emotions that will automatically come up. One is fear, and the other is love. And what's interesting is that whether it's a ghost or whether it's a thought form, if I have the frequency of fear around me, it feeds off of whatever this ghost or this energy is, it feeds off of my fear, and the more it feeds off of it, the more I feel the vibration of the frequency against me, the more fear emanates from me, the more, and I have now created a thread or a contact between myself and whatever it is, and it's growing. And so what I learned to do really fast, and Carlin would have said really fucking fast, okay, because we can't.
Yes, he would have.
Because I'm telling you, that's what you do. It's like, we're gonna go there. Is you have to stop that immediately and come to a total center within yourself and find a place of calm and love and kindness and peace and hold that core no matter what it is that's moving around you, so that it has nothing to feed off of, and that becomes my power. And I learned that really fucking fast, because it was scary.
Exorcism.
It was like, okay.
That's what you signed up for the record.
So that's what I found, was like I had to go to that place, the opposite, and hold the love, and then I could see whatever this thing was with a clearer perspective of, was it a ghost, was it a spirit, was it a thought form, was it a demon, was it whatever it was, and see how it was vibrating, what the frequency of it was. So yeah.
So to return back to the ghost photography, just a quick couple of questions on that. What do you think is actually being photographed? And why don't we see more of them outside of orb pictures?
I'm going to start with the second question first.
Okay.
And I think so often we don't see things because we're not looking for them.
Okay.
Kind of having the eyes to see. And because I have a horribly obsessive personality, I looked through pictures for thousands of hours, so I could see them. I can go into your Facebook account and I can look through photographs of yours specifically, and
won't find much.
I can guarantee you I can find
Oh,
maybe your
the
cousins.
challenge
They're
is
mostly
on.
memes, so.
Oh, memes, there you go. All right, I know what kind of guy you are, I like that. Someone's Facebook account and look at photographs, and I can see them. I can see whether they're, you know, glass, mirrors, a typical, those kind of places. I look for colors to see different colors. I can also see, like, it look like a sketch, but at the color, like in the sky, for instance, but the color is just a tad bit lighter than what the background is. Can see that in it as well. Because I've spent so much time looking for them, so I have the eyes to see. Obsessive. It's a disorder. What was your first question? This is what happens when you ask two in a row.
What do you think is
Oh, what do I think they are?
actually being photographed?
Yeah.
I mean, some people would say, oh, it's old ectoplasm, you know, there were a whole bunch of different things.
I've never
about it.
used or spelled or said the word ectoplasm until just now.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I watch Ghostbusters a lot, but I never said it. I think that there's a lot going on outside of what we've also just talked about. I think there's a lot going on. We could call it thought form, I guess. But there's also alien activity that also exists. And I think there's a lot of activity that goes on that we don't even know, we can't even say, we don't even have a name for it. And one of the really interesting things that I discovered through this process, and of course it was accident, is smoke is like a canvas for all of these energies. And I discovered it because I thought I opened a ghost portal and that I was a dipshit. And so I'm saging a lot and I start taking pictures of the smoke. And all these things start buying hundreds of them in one photograph. Whether it looked like a person or it looked like a Muppet. So it was very clearly there's an energy there. Where it came from, hell if I know. I'm from Oklahoma, I don't know a lot. Hillbillies, hillbilly ghost photographers, what it should have been called. That would have been actually really funny. I'd have sold a lot more books if I called it hillbilly ghost photography. It's all hindsight, isn't it?
It is.
So in your photography, you said you use an iPhone.
Yes.
Is there a specific app that you use?
So the interesting, the phone that I got most of the photographs on was not answering your app question,
Okay.
but it was an iPhone 5.
Okay.
That was before they started doing that 3 pictures in one kind of
Okay.
thing, whatever they call that. Because when you take a photograph now, if whatever that thing's turned on, there looks like there's movement in your photographs. So it was prior to that where I got a lot, so I turned that off. And when I would use an app, I use an app called PicShop, P-I-C-S-H-O-P, because with so many photographs, I learned to flip them on their negative, because you can actually see the energy better, the form of it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I did a lot of flipping on negative,
Right.
is what I really used it for. Sometimes just to see, because sometimes I'd have a photograph, and if I put like full color on it, like the, somebody, read my mind, what is it? Full saturation, but you got the S right. Full saturation, that sometimes they would pop up. Because they're not at an Olin Mills getting ready for a family portrait, right? They're ghosts, or spirits, or whatever the heck they are. And so sometimes you gotta add a little something, or flip it on the negative to see what it's all in it. What are you laughing at? You're looking at it. Sitting by you is very fascinating. I really like it.
So, back in the day when we had disposable cameras, those super little cardboard thingies, those I found to actually be really, really good at taking ghost photography.
Oh.
It was weird.
Because they're kind of crappy.
Yeah, but like,
No,
Love
it's true.
resolution.
No, it's kind of like an iPhone. They're kind of crappy from the camera part of them.
I had one when I was on the Queen Mary for a wedding, and oh my god, all of the ghosts ever in all of those wedding pictures.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Can I see them?
I'll find them for
That'd
you,
be great.
yeah.
I found, because when this all started, I'm like, oh, well, I'm gonna upgrade. And I bought a Samsung, just a camera, not a phone thing, and so I was taking photographs, all I got were orbs. Like orbs galore. Everything was like, it looked like it was raining orbs in the backyard, but all I got were orbs, I didn't get the others, so I definitely think it's low res.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, you're in that like ghost hunter mode, aren't you?
I
You're like, you did that whole Twilight Zone, interesting. And I see the spinning.
Well, also because whenever someone comes to me with a picture and all they're showing me are orbs, there's so many explanations for what those could be that I can't accept that as proof.
I got one
For
for
me.
you.
I'm not doubting that there is proof out there.
What's in it?
Moving, I'll send it to you.
Oh, is it dancing?
Yeah,
Yeah, I love
that
this.
was
So,
opening the portal.
yeah, video would
Yeah.
be more convincing, and something that was responding to a request or command would also be much more convincing.
Yeah.
But a still photograph containing orbs, especially when you're in an old theater that hasn't been swept for 20 years, you know, all that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
it drives me up a wall, and then I have to hurt people's feelings, and then they hurt mine. So,
That's not good.
yeah, so, yeah. It's not about me, though. It's not
Oh, let's
about me.
make it about
So,
you. What do you think
but-
an orb is?
So many things. So many things are possible. It's really, it goes down to the regular dust, pollen, moisture. It could be a fault in the firmware of the camera. It could be software failure. It could be a missing pixel. And so, like I said, there's just so many
What do you
things.
think it is?
I think it's beings that have not, I think all of that,
Right.
and that they are beings that have either, have not yet gained the power to become more than just this beautiful, shiny thing.
Right.
I have one with an elephant's head in it.
Awesome, but not the whole body,
No,
right?
just the head.
See, I think that's a level of energy that the elephant had and the ability to manifest itself. In my video, there are multicolored ones. You've seen it, I've shown it to you before. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't discount the possibility. It's just when
I think
someone
Optimus
asks
got
me my
insane.
opinion, I have to go, there are all these other explanations. So I can't in good conscience say, oh yeah, that's a ghost.
When I'm asked, I say, have you zoomed in on it?
Yeah.
They're like, no, I go zoom. And it will give you the answer, because you'll see or not see something. Because to me, it's kind of like Cracker Jacks, there's always a prize inside. So if it's an orb, there's a prize inside. If it's not, it's all the other explanations.
Nice. Okay.
Don't Cracker Jacks really get around that?
So I'm gonna pull a moderator fail, and how much more time do we have?
About 10 minutes?
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, if we wanted to do questions from the audience.
Okay, we can do that.
We could do that.
I do have a final question, so
Okay.
does anyone from the audience have anything that they want to ask?
I have a question.
Sure.
So with, you were mentioning being in that museum in that room with the vanity set.
Yes.
So, I'm drawn to antique things and I purchase them. So when I heard that, it's like if I could be bringing something home with
Yes.
me and not even realizing it, but I do cleanse my my items. But then I'm thinking, is there a chance that if I'm cleansing it, that I could still have that presence in my home or something like that, if I'm not cleansing that object or something like that?
Probably you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your process is.
Oh, like
So-
smudging, yeah, smudging, or
Okay.
like running water, like kind of visualizing some white light through, like if it's like jewelry or something like that, but it really caught my attention.
That's
you were
what I do.
saying,
That's
because-
exactly what I do. I do either I use white sage and smoke everything and clear it. I make white sage oil, so I will rub everything, especially with secondhand or antique stuff.
Mhm.
I'm very careful about that, because it can be locked in the brush or whatever it is, picture. So, but it sounds like what you're doing sounds good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But for
And I
those
don't see
watching,
anything.
they need to know that they can drag stuff into their house.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
can drag stuff, Suzanne and I, oh, you guys can't see Suzanne. My wife Suzanne, we're all pointing, but camera can't see her. We're at a friend's house and in her bedroom, she had this antique, old-ass metal rocker. And so she had said, oh, she was not a big believer, but she's like, yeah, come over. Because I was kind of like wanting to test my house clearing skills and stuff. And I'm a moron, so you know. And I'm a prepared moron. And so we're in there, and I was saging and I'm doing the Lord's Prayer and doing the whole thing. And we saw the rocker move. And Suzanne and our friend was standing in the doorway, and they saw it move. I went over to go touch that rocker, and I couldn't move it. Like there was something so she brought in an antique that didn't think twice about it. A lot of people do that. And I think it can get really not good for them.
Yeah, and
So
that's
they
why-
should all know what
Before
you
bring it
do.
in.
Yeah, and that's why I brought it up, because I know it's on YouTube to kind of, because people go to estate sales and they're
You
getting
bet they
things
do.
that
They go to
people
the Rose
passed
Bowl
on. Yeah,
and
yeah,
Clean
Pick
before
stuff
you
up.
bring it in the house.
yeah.
Really? I mean, on the porch.
Last holiday season, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who was staying at their in-laws. And it was only the mother-in-law. The father had passed. And the mother-in-law had put them up in the father's bed.
Oh, damn.
And my friend was like, I can't sleep. I was like, yeah. And so I had to instruct them over the phone how to clear the room. And they were so uncomfortable as hell. He had apparently died in the bed.
Okay.
And so trying to tell
That's just
someone
a bad
remotely
idea.
over.
Without
Well,
even having to go
hygienically,
through
that's
that.
just weird.
Yeah, it's just get a new bed.
But yeah, I tried to coach somebody remotely over the phone. Actually, it was via text. How to do that was
Not easy.
fun.
Yeah, I do know someone that deals with haunted objects, and he has a method by which it doesn't even come into his house when he removes it from the place for a number of days, which I think leads into about 3 weeks. And then he has a ritual that he does to kind of clear everything off of it. And this is a man who actually has a haunted object museum that he keeps.
Yeah.
So he's pretty serious about it, to the point where I remember a story where he was transporting some objects that someone said, hey, you're gonna be in our area for this thing, so come down, take these things. And he did, and a friend of mine who is a much better friend of his than me, got a phone call and said, I swear to God, this thing tried to kill me. Because I almost got run off the road by nothing. So, yeah, cautionary tale, be very, very, very careful. So, any other questions? Yes.
Okay, so I've been in some situations where it's not like I've been actively called in to do a clearing or anything like that, but just hanging around in my apartment building, there's definitely entities. There doesn't seem to be anything incredibly in my space now, like incredibly aggressive or negative or anything like that, but there's definitely stuff there. My question is, to what extent can we kind of take on the civic duty of going in and being like, okay, who are you? Why are you here? Would you like to move on? Are there some questions we can ask? Are there basic kind of courtesy things that we can do to maybe nudge people towards moving on if they need to? Because it's one of those odd boundaries where it's like nobody asked me, but they, it's like people who hang out in a park or something.
Maybe on some level they're making themselves known.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Well, they're
Any
making
thoughts
themselves
about?
known to you.
Yes.
So that then leaves you with the responsibility to do something about it.
Well, and specifically in my case, I had been in the situation where I was not really able to visually see entities until about maybe four or 5 years ago or so. And then I started seeing the shadows out of the corner of my eye. And I was like, okay, so you guys are becoming more obvious. What's the deal? So yeah, any other thoughts on?
Yeah, if it's been called to my attention, then I figure it's mine to deal with. Them calling my attention to themselves is the request.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to apologize because I should have thought about it and it would have been awesome to bring it in. But Katie earlier today had one of our clerks had a visitor.
Okay,
Oh,
She had witnessed the coroner down the street.
okay.
And she's like, it just feels like somebody's standing behind me all the time, and I just did what I do, which was, remove it.
I like how you do it like this, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was more.
It's like a visitor tornado that you send it off.
There's more of a sweeping sort of thing that happens. Anyway, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, damn, we should have left it and brought her in and seen if anybody else could see it. But no, but if it's called to my attention, then it is usually mine to deal with. Is my attitude towards it.
Many times what happens with ghosts or disembodied entities is that if you have no relationship to them, they're not going to bother you. But once they have made themselves known to you, that's what Natara is saying, once they've made themselves known, that's what I'm saying, then it becomes yours because you're seeing them and they know you're seeing them. So now there's a relationship. You can have a long-term relationship. That's always an option. Or you can ask them if they'd like to go to the light. Would you like to move out into another space, another dimension? If so, I would be more than happy to help you do that. And, Natara has a protection class, but, smudging is good. Sitting and, and creating the medicine wheel and putting all your objects out and calling in the archangels and the beings, ascended masters to help them move into the light is always an option. And just that nice pie pan of salt in the hallway and lighting it with, you put rubbing alcohol and you light it and it'll, I've watched it, it's like a game.
Put a trivet under it.
Yeah, and it's a glass Pyrex pie plate is what you're doing. And you put rock salt and you pour rubbing alcohol on it. And you make sure that you are protected before you do it. For our viewers, please protect yourself. And
Physically
you light it.
as well as energetically.
And I've watched this thing shoot up 6 feet into the ceiling. I've watched it spread out and come back together. Whatever is there, the alcohol, the fire will consume it. It brings it in the salt, and you wait for it to completely finish burning down, and you cool down, and then you put it in a brown plastic or a brown paper bag and seal it up tightly and put it in the trash. So.
Is this rubbing alcohol or vodka?
No, just rubbing alcohol.
That's wasting some good
Why would
vodka,
you waste
is all I'm saying.
vodka?
If you're going to use vodka, use 151.
Just rubbing alcohol. Yeah.
Rubbing alcohol.
Rubbing alcohol.
You bet.
Okay.
That was my first gift from one of my teachers. Yeah.
Really?
They're lovely, my people. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to do a clearing on a house where there had been a home invasion. And the woman of the house had almost died. They tried to drag her head first down the stairs. And so I had to clear the entire stairs because that's like death, fear, survival level energy there, plus like whatever anger is going on for the person who's doing it and stuff. And yeah, when I lit the salts, it hit the 15 foot ceiling.
Goes way up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's an easy way. But when you
With
first
a trivet.
Please
With
put
a
a trivet
trivet,
underneath because fire.
Well, when you first mentioned it, my thought was just take the rock salt and put it on all the stairs. Put it in all the corners. Let it sit for a couple of days. If you have rock salt and some black sand, you can do that. And then you just sweep it, and you sweep it into a nice pile and put it into, and that'll collect a lot of stuff that just is old and doesn't need to be there anymore.
They like the parking garage a lot. I don't know why that's a thing, but I've
It's a
seen
lot of
it.
salt.
I've seen it in like multiple parking garages
Yeah.
too, not just our
The
building.
feng shui of parking
Yeah,
garages
feng
is
shui.
weird, and so they
Yeah.
get stuck in like the corners and the alcoves.
Okay.
That's why so many spiritual temples, places are around, because they believe that
Right,
energy
there's no
gets
corners.
stuck, there's no corners.
So, any further questions? Yes?
One more.
I'd like to ask about the difference in your processes between clearing a place and clearing a person.
Not a lot of
Not a lot different?
difference.
We just don't set the people on
We
fire.
don't put the rubbing alcohol on.
Yeah, no, I don't let the people on fire. I have like a more specific set procedure for like clearing something off of a person than I do for, I have more of a entire bag of tools for clearing a space, whereas clearing a person is usually fairly, you know, it's like you start here and there's like maybe 3 things and one of those 3 things is gonna work, so.
What do you use?
Well, I start with just kind of doing energy work and, you know, sort of, you know, brushing them off and clearing them off. And the way that I tell whether something's still there or not, just in case I'm not perceiving properly, is I do this. And if the snap doesn't sound right somewhere, there's still a thing there, and so you focus on that space.
I do
That's
that
where I
with bowls.
start, yeah.
Yeah,
If
good
it's,
bowls.
if it's really sticky, I'll do frankincense. Because frankincense I find works better for entities and stuff like that than
Mhm.
white sage does.
Yes.
Or I'll do like a white sage frankincense blend, because that's always fun. And if all else fails, I'll pull out the exorcism prayer and some holy water and go down.
Holy water.
Love holy water.
That's the biggest difference between what I would do for a human, a being versus a house, is the holy water. I tend to use holy water more with houses and spaces and things, like the things you were
Objects.
talking about. I would totally do holy water over every one of those things.
The first time I used it, I didn't know what I was doing, it was fantastic. It's totally true. And I was throwing salt at, it was this vent in this bathroom, it was super creepy. And then I decided to spray holy water, I mean, the whole place was a mess. Sure, but it was messy.
I put holy water in a spritzy bottle, it works for me.
Great,
So,
I was
With
squirting.
rose water, I usually mix the two.
And the most powerful holy water that I have found actually comes from Greek Orthodox or Eastern Orthodox churches, because they actually have a full annual practice of working with holy water, and so it's got so much more oomph to it.
I grew up with that.
Nice.
The priest will come to your house
Yeah.
and bless it.
It's amazing, I love that. It's an Eastery thing, right? Yeah.
I use
Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
East Indian
Okay,
water.
I haven't played with that.
The
Try
Gandhi.
that.
I got mine off Etsy. It's true.
I mean, I also make
But it worked.
but-
So if I was blessed by a guy named Wayne, but it worked.
Yeah, I mean, I make holy water too, so whatever, but.
All right.
With the person, I'm working with their chakras first, clearing all of that, the wheels.
Okay, so I have one final question for each of the panel to answer. And, you know, we're over time, but that's cool, because we're fun.
You too.
Yeah. And so, just, this is something that you could just totally write a book about, just this one question. So, brevity is your friend. At least as much as you can. So, just my final question to each of you is, what can we learn from ghosts to close this whole thing out?
What can we learn from ghosts? That this is not the only dimension.
Excellent answer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that this isn't all there is.
Yeah.
That is the, hands down for me, the number one thing.
Okay.
And I did write a book about it, weird.
That nothing dies.
Okay.
I take your question so much more literally, and now I'm trying to think it. Because I'm like,
You don't want to be a
this-
fool, do you?
Well,
I
no.
feel that. This is the stall tactic,
That's
right, I
pressure,
love it.
that's pressure.
You can be literal, I'm a literal person.
Yeah, no, I was kind of like, well, what can you learn from a ghost? You know, like, where are you from? Why are you here? That kind of stuff. But I think that the practical, personal lesson that I can learn from, that I learned from ghosts is letting go. You know, if I don't let go, I get stuck.
That's good.
So,
Big,
Look, see how you just brought up the end beautifully.
Fling!
So, with that, I want to thank everyone for being here. This
Thank
is
you, Dave.
fantastic.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And you
Absolutely.
wore a jacket and everything.
I did. It's
And you
not
blew on
real.
the dog
I even
shirt.
wore long pants, which is even more
That's
rare.
weird.
Yeah. So, with that, I want to wish everyone in the audience a fantastic rest of the day or evening, wherever you are, and thank you for tuning in, well, no, clicking in, because we don't tune in anymore, to the Matrix Talk Show.
Yay! Thank you.